I mean, who did you vote for privately? In the deep, deep inner twicked recesses of your redundant mind.
Judi Dench and Maggie Smith spent decades as two of Britain's most celebrated actresses, but their relationship was never as simple as friendship or rivalry. Behind the public teasing was a deeper bond shaped by competition, loyalty, and survival in an unforgiving industry. At 91, Judi offered a rare glimpse into that connection, revealing years of respect, humor, and grief. Their story was never about bitterness or envy. It was about two extraordinary women who challenged each other, supported each other, and proved that rivalry and affection can exist side by side. The rumor that refused to die. For decades, the relationship between Judi Dench and Maggie Smith was the subject of persistent rumor and speculation. Were they rivals, friends, or something more complicated entirely? Their interactions, filled with teasing remarks and sharp barbs, often confused observers who mistook their witty exchanges for jealousy or competition. From the outside, it looked like two icons of British theatre locked in a quiet battle for prominence. The truth, however, was far more nuanced, layered, and strikingly human. Both women built their careers in parallel, forging paths in a notoriously unforgiving industry where roles for women, especially as they age, are scarce and sometimes unforgiving. This led to a natural, if sometimes tense, comparison. Who was funnier? Who aged best? Who was asked first for a role? The public's tendency to frame this as rivalry missed the deeper reality. It wasn't about hatred or resentment, but about a complicated dance of respect, competition, and shared survival. Rumors about the nature of their relationship, whether they were enemies under polite smiles or secret friends, were fueled by their refusal to express sentimentality. They weren't the sort to offer warm, public declarations of affection. Instead, they weaponized wit, teasing one another in ways only people who know each other inside and out can do. To outsiders, it sometimes looked cold or clipped, until you understood the language beneath it. Despite the pervasive whispers, no authentic reconciliation or feud ever emerged because their bond was never about simple categories. They were not simply friends who never quarreled, nor rivals who never cared for one another. Their relationship existed in a unique space where competition coexisted with admiration and rivalry became a form of respect. That complexity made their story uncommon, sometimes misunderstood, but always compelling. The rumor that refused to die was the idea that they hated each other, or that jealousy tore them apart. But the truth, as Judi Dench finally admitted in a moment of raw grief, is that rivalry was only part of the story, and it was not their undoing. That truth prompts a closer look at how this rivalry grew alongside a profound, if unconventional, friendship. Understanding where it began sheds light on why such a relationship could endure. Long before the headlines and major film franchises, Judi and Maggie started their careers practically side by side in the demanding world of British theatre. This shared origin seeded a bond shaped by necessity and circumstance more than simple choice. Far from the glamour of film sets and award shows, the theatre was their proving ground, a place where talent met harsh discipline. Their early days were marked by shared dressing rooms, long rehearsals, and the pressure to hold their ground in a field that basically gave women few breaks, you know? The pressures of age, typecasting, and that whole fleeting opportunity thing meant that every role was this precious shot. And yes, sometimes a contest too. But it was right there in that first stretch that they formed a connection which only makes sense to anyone who has actually lived the backstage rhythm of survival. It was in this harsh setup that the sharp humor they swapped around became like a working language of trust. They knew exactly where to push each other, when a tease would land a little too hard, and when it would soften again with laughter. That code of toughness and loyalty stitched together the bond for decades, way past anything an outsider could clock just by watching awards nights or those careful interviews. Even later, when their careers really took off into international recognition, with Oscars and dameships, this early relationship stayed in the background, still shaping how they talked and how they moved with each other. Their shared beginnings kept them planted in a reality other people almost never see. It wasn't only about who grabbed the next big part, it was also about surviving the trials of an industry that rarely makes room for women of their age and stature. The early connection between Judi Dench and Maggie Smith gives you the clue for why those rivalry rumors felt so believable, and why the friendship hung on so long. What looked from the outside like competitive hostility was, more or less, a lifelong negotiation between two exceptionally talented women who understood what they were up against, and who understood each other just as clearly. This foundation leads naturally into how their rivalry became not a wedge, but a source of strength. Meeting at the Old Vic. Judi Dench and Maggie Smith's story truly began at London's Old Vic, where both were young actresses trying to establish themselves in a demanding theater world. The long hours, shared dressing rooms, and constant pressure brought them close, while also placing them in direct competition. Maggie later joked that they went back a long way, remembering how they shared dressing rooms and how Judi landed certain roles she did not. Behind the humor was the reality of an industry where every casting decision mattered, especially for women fighting for limited opportunities. Born only weeks apart, Judi and Maggie moved through similar theater circles at nearly the same time. Comparisons between them became almost inevitable. Critics, audiences, and the industry often tried to measure one against the other, creating the impression of a rivalry. But that competition never completely defined their relationship. Their early struggles gave them a shared understanding of what it took to survive professionally. They both knew the disappointment of losing roles, the pressure of proving themselves, and the difficulty of aging in an industry that could be especially unforgiving toward women. Those experiences shaped a friendship built on ambition, respect, and resilience. The Old Vic did more than launch their careers. It helped create the foundation of a bond that would last for decades. The Old Vic was where they sort of learned how to calibrate everything. Their interactions, finding ways to show affection that felt real for their own kind of people, quick-witted and sharp-tongued. Very British, all the way through. They weren't really going to play at sentimentality, no, but they could tease, correct, and laugh with a familiarity that outsiders usually get wrong. Sometimes it looks like rivalry, sure, but it wasn't quite that. That connection got forged in the pressures and oddities of the theater world, the whole environment kinda demanding, even when you pretended it wasn't. Later, as their careers expanded, so did the reputations, but those earlier days at the Old Vic stayed lodged in them. It was a common history. Not many others could even claim something like it. And that history shaped their respect, sharpened the instincts, kept them on their toes. It's telling, really, that even after the fame arrived, their public selves never quite managed to show the real intricacies underneath. Both women built resilience out of those formative years. They learned how to work through an industry that stacks talent against opportunity, and where status can swing suddenly, like a switch that nobody warned you about. That resilience is why their so-called rivalry carried actual weight, yet never tipped into full-on hostility. They were teammates in adversity, even when they were also competing for limited roles and the recognition that comes with it. The importance of those first years at the Old Vic keeps echoing across their whole careers. They weren't merely peers, not in the usual sense. They were companions on a difficult road. And when you understand how that early setting shaped them, it becomes clearer why their relationship, so often misunderstood, was constructed from this messy mix of mutual challenge and steady support. From here, it's clear how competition between them, rather than dividing, actually fostered growth. The lessons learned in those cramped dressing rooms formed the basis for a rivalry that fueled excellence instead of resentment. Rivalry as fuel, not poison. Their rivalry was very real, but it wasn't a poison that corroded their friendship. It was the fire that refined it. Sharing the same generation of British actors who mastered Shakespeare, comedy, film, and television, Dench and Smith understood what it meant to compete in an environment that gave few chances for women to rise or maintain relevance. This knowledge made their rivalry less about personal bitterness and more about shared ambition. Both acknowledged that competition stung but never turned cruel. They supported each other's brilliance even as they pushed to be the best. This dynamic sharpened their talents rather than dulling them. They realized that when the person beside you is brilliant, you either shrink or rise to the challenge. Judi and Maggie clearly chose the latter. Their jokes about who was asked first for a role carried more than humor. They held an honest acknowledgement of the realities they faced. For outsiders, these remarks might seem bitter, but between them, they were affectionate blades, cutting, yes, but delivered with trust and understanding. Such exchanges kept their connection authentic and alive amid an industry that often pitted women against one another in toxic ways. Their rivalry also reflected a rare professional respect. Acting is often portrayed as glamorous and rewarding, but behind every award and standing ovation lies a world of missed opportunities, second guesses, and relentless pressure. They bore witness to each other's struggles and triumphs in a way few colleagues ever do. Their competition lived alongside a deep understanding of what the other had sacrificed. Importantly, their rivalry did not hide insecurities, but exposed them, making room for honesty. They could tease about age, memory, and fame, all pressing issues for women in their profession, without pretending those challenges didn't affect them. This honesty made their relationship both complicated and compelling. In a different Hollywood story, two actresses in their position might have become bitter enemies, each envious of the other's success. But Judi and Maggie refused to let rivalry breed hatred. Their relationship survived because it was forged from recognition of each other's extraordinary talent and shared experience. Their ability to maintain friendship under such intense competition illustrates a kind of strength often overlooked in stories about women in the arts. They showed that admiration and rivalry are not mutually exclusive. They can coexist, fueling growth and connection. That truth sets the stage for understanding the deeper bond that grief would later reveal. Beneath the sharp exchanges and teasing lay a profound companionship born from decades of walking the same difficult path. Their rivalry was not the enemy of their friendship. It was part of it, inseparable and necessary. This understanding opens the door to exploring what lay beyond the public personas they cultivated and how their private friendship held a wealth of unspoken emotions waiting to be uncovered, beyond public personas. Maggie Smith is often remembered by the public as the sharp-tongued, quick-witted dame, roles like Professor McGonagall in Harry Potter or the Dowager Countess in Downton Abbey. These characters showcased her mastery of timing and one-liners that could cut through any scene with elegant precision. But those images, while iconic, only represent one facet of a much deeper and more complex artist. Behind the sharp exterior was a woman of surprising vulnerability, depth, and range that few truly saw. Judi Dench understood this fuller Maggie, one who had fought hard for serious roles long before blockbuster franchises made her a household name. She knew the younger actresses who had to prove themselves alongside legends like Laurence Olivier, always pushing to be dangerously alive on stage. Maggie was not just funny or sharp. She could be wounded, romantic, fierce, and even exhausting in the best way. Her craft demanded everything she had, and she gave it all unapologetically. Maggie's career was never confined to a single style or image. She moved fluidly across Shakespeare, West End comedies, Broadway dramas, and films ranging from Merchant Ivory's period pieces to Agatha Christie mysteries. This immense versatility was part of what made people compare her to Judi for decades. They were both rare chameleons in an industry eager to typecast. Maggie's refusal to be boxed in made her roles richer and her presence on stage and screen unforgettable. Public perception, however, sometimes reduced Maggie to just the sharp old woman, masking the tenderness beneath that steel. This gap between image and reality helped fuel rumors that she was prickly, cold, or difficult. Such labels are common for older actresses, especially those who resist softening themselves to fit industry or audience expectations. But Maggie's sharpness was a shield, a way to keep control in a world that could be unforgiving. Behind it lay pain and resilience. Her first marriage to actor Robert Stevens was fraught and complicated, affected by his struggles with mental health and infidelity. Maggie juggled the demands of motherhood with the pressures of a growing career while trying to hold together a fractured family life. Eventually, that marriage ended. Later, she married playwright Beverly Cross, whose steady presence helped stabilize her for many years until his death. This loss deeply affected Maggie, adding layers to her private life often hidden from public view. Despite private challenges, Maggie still kept a sort of controlled exterior, like she had that disciplined theater drilled into her, and maybe that was it. Even when inside she felt, well, not always neat. Yet Judi Dench knew, somehow, deeper than reputation, that control can hide a real understanding of loneliness and endurance. Both women basically shared the odd experience of being watched constantly, while they stayed fiercely private. And they did it without turning it into a performance about themselves. They lived this contradiction as public figures whose true selves were so often invisible to the world. And that made their bond feel different, because it held both the surface and the depth, not just one or the other. Their careers also mirrored this complicated balance, showing not only brilliance, but the cost that comes from sustained success in a tough industry. Both Judi and Maggie earned multiple awards, and the kind of respect that follows you everywhere. But they never let that acclaim build a wall between them. Instead, they stayed intertwined. They were fairly open about ambitions and insecurities, and they were always tuned in to how fragile things are once the spotlight keeps moving. Their friendship wasn't just about smiling at achievement. It was as much about witnessing survival and saying, "Yes, I see you, I get it." That gap between public persona and private reality also makes it clearer why their relationship could only be truly understood by people who lived something similar. It wasn't about simple love or rivalry dressed up in nicer words. It was more a nuanced connection, built from mutual respect for the complicated weight each woman carried. And that shared understanding laid the groundwork for the emotional truths grief would later reveal. Truths that weren't softened for public consumption. When you know that, the rawness in Judi Dench's grief lands even harder. It's not only that she recognized Maggie as a peer or maybe a rival, it's that she saw her as a mirror and also a witness to a life measured in artistic triumphs and personal trials back to back. That kind of honesty is rare. It suggests a friendship formed by real recognition, sometimes kind, sometimes painful, and still not the kind that disappears when the cameras go away. The depth of this connection became even clearer as life tested them with loss, connecting seamlessly to how the bonds between them endured, even strengthened, through grief. Shared loss and grief. Judi Dench and Maggie Smith were connected not only by decades in the same profession, but also by the personal losses they both carried. Judi lost her husband, Michael Williams, in 2001. His death left a deep absence in her life, and she later spoke about grief as something that could be carried into her work. Pain did not simply disappear. Instead, it became part of the emotional depth she brought to her performances. Maggie experienced a similar loss after the death of her second husband, Beverly Cross. She never remarried, and although she remained famously private, that loss stayed with her. Behind the sharp humor and strong public image was someone who also understood loneliness and the difficulty of continuing after losing a longtime partner. That shared experience gave Judi and Maggie a level of understanding that went beyond acting. Both knew what it meant to continue working while carrying grief privately. They also understood the strange reality of being expected to remain composed in public while dealing with deeply personal pain. This is what made Judi's grief after Maggie's death so powerful. She was not simply mourning a fellow actress. She was mourning someone who had witnessed decades of her life, her successes, disappointments, losses, and changes. Their friendship had been shaped by far more than awards, roles, or professional competition. It had survived personal tragedy, aging, and the pressures of an industry that could be especially unforgiving toward older women. Rather than allowing competition to turn into resentment, they seemed to understand that both were facing many of the same struggles. Their rivalry existed, but so did respect and recognition. They could even joke about aging, memory, and mortality, with the kind of honesty that comes from knowing each other for years. Humor became one way of facing difficult realities without pretending they did not exist. Their grief was also intensely private. Neither woman built her public identity around personal suffering. That is why Judi becoming emotional while speaking about Maggie felt so revealing. For a moment, the polished actress disappeared, leaving behind someone struggling to describe what she had lost. In mourning Maggie, Judi was also mourning part of her own history. So many memories, jokes, struggles, and milestones had been shared between them that losing Maggie meant losing someone who understood chapters of Judi's life that few others could. Their story shows why the simple label of rivals never fully captured their relationship. Competition was only one part of something much deeper. Through love, loss, ambition, and survival, Judi Dench and Maggie Smith remained witnesses to each other's lives. And in the end, Judi's grief revealed what rumors never could. Beneath the rivalry was a lasting friendship built on understanding, loyalty, and decades of shared experience. Their shared history of loss leads naturally into how, despite everything, they defied an industry built to push women aside as they aged and redefined what it means to remain powerful on screen and stage. Defying ageism together, Judi Dench and Maggie Smith witnessed firsthand how the entertainment industry can be unforgiving to women as they age. Opportunities often shrink, roles become fewer and narrower, and societal expectations pressure actresses to fade quietly from the spotlight. Yet, both women resisted this erosion of space. Instead of disappearing, they transformed their age into a source of power and presence, redefining what it means to be an older actress with authority and charisma. Maggie Smith's later career showcased this transformation vividly. Her role as Violet Crawley in Downton Abbey was not a softening with age, but a sharpening. Her one-liners, dripping with wit and impatience, carried decades of lived experience. The character wouldn't have the same impact without Maggie's history of stage timing and poise. Age became not a limitation for her, but a tool she wielded masterfully. Similarly, Judi Dench reshaped the landscape for older actresses through roles like M in the James Bond films. She was not a decorative presence. She commanded scenes with a mixture of authority, disappointment, and subtle affection. Her age gave her credibility and strength rather than diminishing her. Her voice alone could shift the tone of a scene, suggesting everything from danger to warmth with a single sentence. Both women understood the industry's harsh realities better than most. Youth is celebrated, beauty is harshly judged, and aging women often face invisibility in film and theater. Yet, Judi and Maggie turned those challenges on their heads. They proved that wit, presence, and talent do not fade, but deepen with time. Their careers became symbols of endurance and triumph over the invisible barriers so many women confront. This quiet revolution changed audience expectations as well. Viewers saw that older women could be central, complex figures rather than side characters or footnotes. Judi and Maggie demonstrated that older actresses carry memory, judgment, grief, and power, all of which make their performances richer. They subtly demanded audiences recognize the authority that comes with age. Their success also kinda challenged industry norms, and honestly, it made things feel more complicated. Both women refused to beg for youth or to accept roles that disguised their age, like it was a secret. Instead, they leaned into it completely, showing that an older actress can be funny, terrifying, even elegant, and emotionally dangerous all at once. Their example opened more than doors for storylines. It made room for honest storytelling about women's lives beyond youthfulness. That ability to turn age into authority also mirrored their pride in the craft. Judi and Maggie were not just actresses clinging to fame. They were artists evolving as time moved on, doing the whole thing with intention. They carried every year of experience into their performances, and that depth became a signature. And instead of shrinking, they expanded what roles were allowed to be. You know what I mean. Their late career triumphs influenced peers as well as newcomers. They demonstrated that a lifetime in the profession can culminate in roles that command respect from audiences and critics, both at once. In that process, they quietly redefined what success and longevity could look like on screen and stage. Their shared refusal of ageism is yet another layer in the story, of course, of their intertwined lives. It shows a resilience that kept them relevant and vital, and it further ties them together as women who understood the struggles as well as the wins that come with a long artistic journey. Behind every private joke and teasing remark lay the fierce loyalty of women who had weathered the storm together, a loyalty that would reveal itself most quietly and powerfully in their closest moments. The private friendship unseen by fans. Behind the sharp wit and occasional rivalry, Judi Dench and Maggie Smith shared a private friendship that few people truly understood. Their bond was built over decades in a demanding industry, creating a kind of shorthand that only longtime friends could recognize. They teased each other, interrupted one another, corrected mistakes, and traded cutting remarks. To outsiders, those moments sometimes looked harsh. But between Judi and Maggie, the humor was rooted in trust. They knew each other well enough to understand where the boundaries were and how far they could push without causing real danger. Their friendship was never overly sentimental. Instead, it was built on honesty, loyalty, and shared experience. They supported one another through professional pressure, personal loss, aging, and the constant expectations that came with being two of Britain's most respected actresses. Publicly, they appeared polished and composed. Privately, their friendship was far more relaxed. They could drop the performance, speak bluntly, joke about uncomfortable truths, and simply be themselves. That closeness also had a protective side. Both women understood how isolating fame could become, especially for people who valued privacy. They recognized each other's insecurities and vulnerabilities without needing to explain them. Their relationship proved that friendship does not always have to look gentle. Competition, teasing, and deep affection can exist at the same time. In fact, those differences may have helped keep their bond strong. After Maggie's death, Judi's emotional reaction revealed just how meaningful that connection had been. She was not mourning merely a colleague. She had lost someone who had shared decades of memories, struggles, triumphs, and private jokes. Their friendship endured because it demanded very little performance and a great deal of honesty. Beneath every sarcastic remark and knowing glance was something much deeper: loyalty, understanding, and a bond that could never be replaced. Their intimate connection opens the door to the poignant moments Judi Dench revealed to the world, moments where grief stripped away all pretense and exposed the true nature of their bond. Judi's tearful admission. The moment Judi Dench revealed the depth of her relationship with Maggie Smith came not through carefully chosen words, but through tears. While speaking at the Cheltenham Literature Festival about Maggie and another close friend who had passed away, Judi suddenly fell silent, overwhelmed by grief. For an actress known for her composure, the emotion said more than any prepared tribute could. Her reaction made it clear that Maggie had been far more than a colleague or professional rival. She had been a lifelong friend who shared decades of laughter, struggles, backstage memories, and personal understanding. Their bond was complicated, but it was also built on loyalty and respect. To audiences, Maggie Smith was known for unforgettable roles in Harry Potter, Downton Abbey, and countless stage and film productions. But Judi was mourning the woman behind those performances, the private, witty, strong, and deeply human friend she had known for years. Their friendship kind of messed with that familiar idea, where two successful actresses, competing for roles and recognition, must secretly resent one another. There was competition, yes, but it never quite turned into hatred. More like it just pushed both women along and, in a way, strengthened the relationship, all while they were getting pressed by an unforgiving industry. They both understood the disappointments of acting, roles lost, awards missed, difficult reviews, and those sacrifices that show up along the way. But somehow ambition never fully broke their friendship, not even close. Judi's inability to finish speaking became one of those most powerful statements about their relationship. Like some bonds are just too deep to be explained neatly, even when you try. And you could see it in the moment. In the end, her tears did tell the real story behind all those years of rivalry rumors. Maggie Smith wasn't simply Judi Dench's competitor, no. She was her friend, her equal, and someone who'd walked with her through a remarkable journey. A relationship built on honesty, humor, respect, and lasting affection. Judi Dench's heartfelt tears revealed the truth behind years of rumors, showing that rivalry and friendship can coexist in powerful ways. Their story reminds us that real bonds are often complicated, shaped by shared struggles, honesty, and years of history. If you found this story moving, please like and subscribe for more heartfelt insights into the lives behind the legends. And before you go, watch the next video appearing on your screen to uncover another unforgettable story hiding behind the spotlight.